And then Kevin met Jesus on the battlefield.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Ash Sheep Among Wolves Barzun.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, and just wrapped up our coverage of Westworld Season 4. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, I'm very excited. This week, one of our listeners, Andy from Norway, contacted us with a special request to do the 1997 horror film, The Devil's Advocate.
When they wrote in and said, hi, first of all, thank you for all the work and effort you put in with the podcast. Although I only listen to the Shat The Movies podcast, out of your eclectic selection, I still think that you should all be applauded for taking the time and for putting yourselves out there too on a regular basis. For my commission, I've chosen The Devil's Advocate. The reason I picked this film specifically is because I wanted to commemorate my wife, who sadly passed away 2 years ago. And although I have been a fan since the War Games podcast, hearing you all during those days and weeks while I got my life back together helped me immensely, and I will be forever grateful for that. I have since moved on and have found someone else to be a part of my life, so all is good, but I wanted to pick a film my wife loved to see and help keep funding the podcast that has helped me so much. It has been a while since I have seen this film, and I suspect it might not hold up as well now, but I have always thought it was a fun watch, perhaps a bit on the long side, but Charlize Theron, who always looks good, and some good old 90s boobs. So I predict a 2 on the wipe scale, as I am banking on someone knocking off a 0.5 for the boobs alone. Thank you again for everything you do, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Kind regards, Andy.
Andy, thank you so much for commissioning this film and supporting the podcast and all of your kind words. I love that you mixed the commemoration of your wife who passed away 2 years ago and good old 90s boobs. You are a well-rounded individual, and we love you so much.
Andy, we're glad that we could have played a small role in helping you heal, and we're glad that you have brighter days ahead.
Well, Devil's Advocate is a 1997 horror movie starring Keanu Reeves, Al Pacino, and Charlize Theron's boobs. Based on Andrew Niederman's 1990 novel of the same name, it is about a gifted young Florida lawyer, played by Keanu Reeves, invited to New York City to work for a major firm. As his wife, played by Charlize Theron, becomes haunted by frightening visions, the lawyer slowly begins to realize the owner of the firm, Al Pacino, is not what it appears to be and is in fact the devil. The Devil's Advocate received mixed reviews, with critics crediting it for entertainment value and Pacino's performance. It grossed $153 million in the box office and won the Saturn Award for Best Horror Film. It became the subject of a copyright lawsuit, Hart versus Warner Brothers, Inc., for its visual art. In the lawsuit, in federal court in Alexandria, sculptor Frederick E. Hart and the Washington National Cathedral alleged that a sculpture that comes to life in The Devil's Advocate was copied illegally from Hart's signature work, which adorns the main entrance of the cathedral. Ash, Big D, we always ask what your memories are of the film we're covering. Tonight, it is The Devil's Advocate. Big D, let's start with you.
So this movie came out, I think I was a junior year in college. I honestly have no memory of it. I don't remember the first time I saw it. I could remember the poster. But I do want to state really early on here that the portrayal in this film of Gainesville is far too complimentary. We know Gainesville is the home of UF, Roger Roper's alma mater, where he dressed up as Albert the Gator. It is a shit swamp town, regardless of what Roger says. I've been there, and now that UF's football team is irrelevant, there is no good reason to ever go to Gainesville.
I mean, I think all we see in the movie Big D is that there's child molesters and like a weird backwood church. What part of this is complimentary?
Well, that's actually true. That's very true. Well, because they highlight the T-shirts of like the championship teams, and you see some signs up. So I was thinking, yes, yeah. I think maybe it's an accurate portrayal.
Well, this was a movie I was not allowed to see in theaters. My parents had no problem with a ton of violence, but anything sex or evil, they were not okay with because they're super religious. So instead, this is one of the ones I had to sneak at Blockbuster. I used to rent Clerks or Mallrats or Heathers pretty much every weekend at this point in my life. And so I would just take that box, take the movie out, put The Devil's Advocate in, got it home, wait until my parents went to bed, and then I watched it. And I remember really liking this movie from the first watch. I thought it was scary. I thought it was interesting. I remember thinking Al Pacino was great in it. So I was really, really excited to go back and rewatch this one.
Quick question on this one. I'm not a parent, obviously, as far as I know. Is it easier to keep track of what kids are watching when you have them on devices, or is it easier if they actually had to go to the store and get it?
I mean, I find the device thing super easy because we track his browser history.
Yeah. There's parent settings, so you can actually set age groups. You can go back again and see. You can lock out specific content as long as people are honest. We found, and I don't, Ash, if you ever came across this, somebody on beaten the kids' YouTube algorithm, where they had done a bootleg version of Paw Patrol, and it looked authentic. And in the scene, the cop, who is Chase, he stumbles upon a robbery. There's a murder. Chase then goes to the funeral, and in the background, a plane is struck by lightning and crashes. I'm watching this, and it looked authentic. Somebody had created it and snuck it on YouTube. So even though you feel confident, you still got to really pay attention to what they're doing.
Right. And I mean, and this is eventually until he gets smarter than us with tech. Like, as of right now, we're smarter than him, but eventually he'll figure it out and hack his way around it. I'm quite sure.
Maybe the curve of that will also match the maturity curve. So right when he's ready to see sex and the devil.
Right. He can watch The Devil's Advocate. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's perfect. Well, because I've always been the talkative, clever, argumentative type, my family and teachers often nudged me toward a legal career. My entire childhood, it was like, you should be a lawyer. He's going to be a lawyer. But movies like this, like The Devil's Advocate, justifiably painted lawyering in such a terrible light that they made the entire idea repulsive. I could never be a lawyer. So I want to send a special shout out to Keanu and company for freaking out 17-year-old Gene and assuring that he'd choose a far more lucrative career in small town journalism. I'm really living the life now. Thanks, Keanu. Let's get to the trailer.
A young attorney has the chance of a lifetime.
Milton Chadwick Waters.
We want you to come to New York. All expenses, first class, travel and lodging, you and your wife.
Oh my God. He will enter a place of wealth and ambition.
We've got 40 partners vested at the moment. In addition to our corporate clients, we're currently representing about 25 foreign countries. He's got you scheduled for 15 minutes, so make the most of it.
John Milton.
Kevin Lomax.
Well, what's that like? One day you're putting them away, next day you're setting them free.
Takes a little getting used to.
Pays better though, doesn't it?
Welcome to Babylon, Ma.
Speak of the devil.
A world of power and seduction.
Who's that with the senator?
Controlled by one man.
I swear he can hear us. Hell, he can smell us.
He will make your dreams come true.
Want to come upstairs and...
Now?
He will grant your fondest wish.
I'm just warming my hands on your talent. You know what I see? I see the future of this law firm.
He knows your greatest fear.
Milton is into everything. Arms brokering, chemical weapons, toxic waste, money laundering for the Eastern Bloc. I mean, it goes on and on.
I don't like it here, Kevin.
And he knows the price of your soul.
Let's make a play.
Who are you? Oh, I have so many names. I'm here on the ground with my nose in it since the whole thing began. God likes to watch. He's an absentee landlord.
Keanu Reeves.
He's always been there. I know that now.
Al Pacino.
As God sleeps late.
We will win.
It's my time now.
The Devil's Advocate.
Kevin Lomax is a Florida defense attorney who has never lost a case. In defending a child molester he knows to be guilty, Kevin destroys the victim's credibility, securing a not guilty verdict. A New York City law firm asks Kevin to assist a jury selection. After the jury delivers a not guilty verdict, the head of the firm, John Milton, offers Kevin a high-paying job. Kevin accepts, and he and his wife, Marianne, move to Manhattan. He is soon spending most of his time at work, leaving Marianne feeling isolated. Kevin's fundamentalist mother, Alice, visits New York City and suggests they both return home.
So we recently did Liar Liar with Jim Carrey, and we spent a lot of the podcast discussing his abilities as a lawyer, his technique, his strategies. Watching this film right away, it hits me. Forget Vincent Gambini, Ellen Woods, Lieutenant Daniel Caffrey, Fletcher Reed. If I ever commit a crime or I'm accused of anything, no matter how small, Kevin Lomax is my lawyer 100% of the time. He loves to go to court. He doesn't settle. He's well-versed in law. He's handsome. He connects with all the jurors, male, female, any age. He has an innate instinct to select jurors, and he's willing to put the time in to learn about the case and to find a loophole. But the best part, he has zero problem doing anything that is legal to get his client a win. He will compromise anything, including being willing to destroy an emotionally fragile teenager in front of her molester. This guy will do anything. He's a shitbag, but I want him as my attorney.
Big D, you're saying that Kevin emotionally connects with the jury. I think he would turn any jury off. I can't think of a single jury that would return a not guilty verdict after the defense attorney verbally massacres an underage witness on the stand. Like, that's not a sympathetic defendant. It's not going to work. Also, why does this movie consider a guilty plea to be a loss? Like, if your defense attorney gets you a good plea deal, that's a win in my book. That's an attorney doing his job well.
No, man, because then you're saddled with the conviction the rest of your life and can't get a job. But I don't know. I call bullshit here. I would immediately return a verdict of not guilty with the way that he completely paints this girl. He makes an incredibly decent case of how she made the whole thing up. And I think Heather Mazzarato, or however you say her last name, she does absolutely amazing in this scene. She's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. And y'all, come on. Like, most women aren't believed when they're sexually assaulted. So this completely rings true for me. And the debate person in me loved watching him annihilate all of these people in the courtroom. And I don't know how you could return a guilty verdict after he, gets the whole whisper in the closet. She got all of her friends to make up theirs. I mean, that's reasonable doubt.
Yeah. Maybe because they could see the defendant jerking off in the courtroom.
Nah, nobody else could see that.
No, he was hiding his chubby. You couldn't see it. He was just molesting the desk.
Whenever we think nobody can see us masturbating, they can see us masturbating.
Oh, no, don't say that. Don't say that.
It reminded me of the fact that I have no faith in a jury of my peers. Like, maybe when the Constitution was written, a jury of your peers would consist of fairly civic-minded people in wigs, like-minded, decent human beings who understood the law and wanted to see justice done, and then they would go home to their farms. I doubt it. They were probably shitbags back then too, but let's be optimists here and assume that back then a jury of your peers, they were educated, they had clear consciences. That clearly is not the case in 2022. I walk out on the street, I go to the grocery store, I dislike and mistrust the vast majority of people I encounter. They certainly don't understand the law. They're hopelessly prejudiced, and they think shows like Westworld are complicated. Wouldn't it make more sense to have a jury of lawyers? Like, that should be the bare minimum, is if you want to be on a jury, you have to actually understand the law to begin with.
I think I've said this before. I finally served on a jury. I had been waiting a long time. I really wanted to do it. It was an armed robbery case with these two kids who had robbed 3 or 4 people in a park. I took it very seriously. I paid attention. We get to deliberation. It's clear that these kids have done it. Other members of the jury said, "Where's the DNA? Where's the video? And they're like, we have identification. They caught the person in the area. The gun was 30 feet away. Well, why is there no DNA on the gun? We're like, come on, Matlock. TV and movies have spoiled juries today. If there is not a direct forensic gotcha, they wanted to acquit these kids. And thankfully, I kind of massaged things. We got them. And it turned out that the kids had just also been convicted of raping 2 girls in the same park that we had no idea about because it was a separate case.
Yeah, I mean, my sister is an attorney and she gets so frustrated when she watches any movie like this. She's like, no one can approach the jury box. Like, you can't approach the witness. Like, you have to stay away from them. So I do agree. Like, they make this job look very dramatic. They make it look very exciting. But the truth is, being a lawyer is mostly paperwork. And some of it, like if you're a trial attorney, you get a couple moments in the sun there, but most of it is paperwork. I'm going to complain for a second about accents in this movie because I complain all the time when a movie is set in the South, like A Time to Kill, where everyone has these real thick Southern accents and they got this drawl and there's no AC anywhere in the South, which is just blatantly untrue. And so they open in this courtroom and I counted 7 different people with fans. Like it's 1946 in a courthouse in Gainesville. And I know that we're in your territory here, Big D, because I don't consider Florida to be a part of the South, much less the U.S. when I think about it too much. Is this accent correct? Because Kevin, when it can be consistent, because Keanu Reeves isn't great with an accent, when he does have the accent, it sounds like North Mississippi. It doesn't sound like Florida.
Please, if you don't think like rural Florida is like the South, it is the epitome. It's isolated. I would say that Gainesville and a lot of the SEC cities, they're all identical. I can't tell the difference between Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. It all to me sounds like The Water Boy, like reduced by like 20%. It's all fairly similar. These are all the same people. You can mix and match them, and then nobody would know.
There is a massive difference in an accent between Alabama and Georgia. And the Water Boy is a Cajun accent. It sounds nothing like a Southern accent. You're a terrible source.
Bobby Boucher went to UF, okay?
He was in Louisiana. He didn't go to University of Florida.
What was the school? I got to go back
Basin.
and check. Somebody commissioned it. I don't know.
Oh my God.
They filmed it right here in Orlando.
Never mind. I retrieve my question from you, sir.
I can tell the northern part of Mississippi.
That is not what it sounds like in northern Mississippi.
It's very different from the central part of Alabama.
You're sounding a lot like Charleston right now, my friend.
What the Devil's Advocate gets right is Middle Easterners. When people talk about the Devil's Advocate, nobody ever talks about Bashir. Bashir is like Milton Chadwick Waters' man in the Middle East. This dude deserves to be celebrated as the most accurate portrayal of a Middle Eastern man in American cinema. Because he talks just like everybody in my family talks. Like they're talking about Kevin and his promising future after he gets his first win in New York. And all he says is bright young lights. And if you're an Iranian American, an Arab, or a Kurd, you know the truth I'm talking about here. This is how our people speak. Shout out to Bashir. I love you, man.
Man, I was convinced that was Molaram. I had to look it up because he looked very similar to me. He wasn't. I don't want to stereotype Middle Easterners. I don't want to take.
What are you trying to say, man?
Well, it looked like Molaram. It was not him. But a lot of this movie is predicated, obviously, with the title "The Devil." There's a lot of religious undertones, but far too often for me, I'm turned off immediately when somebody starts quoting biblical scripture. It always seems like an easy way. You're trying to either end a conversation or end an argument where people just think, hey, if I can spout out the most scripture and I can quote the Bible, that shows that, I'm a better follower. I'm more worthy. I can shut you up. They treat it like it's like sports trivia. Like, hey, what does Job 16:19 say? I don't know. I don't care. It's like song lyrics to me. I think it's ridiculous. And when this movie does it, it just immediately made me realize. So anybody who starts quoting scripture, I immediately think they're a fake follower. The Bible, it's a cool book. It's a great book. Patton Oswalt said, it's got wonderful passages, but it also talks about ghost sex, giants, super babies, talking snakes, and demons. And this is why we don't base the law on Game of Thrones or My Little Pony or Legend of Zelda. It's just ridiculous.
I was raised Baha'i, and we didn't so much memorize scripture, but we memorized prayers. When I found out that white people just make up prayers themselves, I was like, what the fuck? You're real important there, Jacob. You get to just make up your own prayers out of your ass. The point of memorizing prayers, though, for us was to have words upon which to reflect in times of temptation or when you needed strength, right? When I was going through some adversity, I would remember a prayer that was relevant to that sort of adversity, and that would kind of make me feel like I was like supercharged, right, to deal with that sort of thing. I believe that's what Christians do with scripture.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's the purpose of the book of Psalms, right? Like the entirety of the book of Psalms are prayers that people memorize and then quote them or recite them to themselves. Like, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Like all of those are prayers. But I don't know. I come from a very religious family, and there's no people that are more committed to the Christian faith than I would say my family, including my grandmother who just passed. And they quote scripture all the time. They quote it like I quote authors that I love. And I don't think it makes them fake. I actually think what I really enjoyed about this movie is the portrayal of Kevin's mom from the get-go, because they could have gone crazy with her. She could have been like a crazy Bible thumping, angry person. And she wasn't. She was very meek. She was very mild. And did she quote scripture? Yes. Was that her faith? Yes. But I appreciated that she wasn't some caricature that a lot of time these characters can become, where she's like speaking in tongues halfway through the movie.
Now you made me feel guilty. Did I besmirch all of our religious listeners?
Maybe.
No, you're not wrong. Some people take it to the extreme, and it does become sports trivia. Mm-hmm. But I think there is a purpose to it. I don't do it. I know like 3 prayers.
It just bothers me. Understand the concepts, I think, of what the scripture is teaching you instead of remembering it word for word. That to me is more important. And generally, I found the people who are the most faithful and live the true life are the ones who don't walk around patting themselves on the back, proving to you how holy they are.
I don't know. It was just like a way of life for my grandmother. Like she wasn't doing it to prove anything. She did it because she lived, breathed, and ate Christianity. Like that was her entire life.
But I think old school, when you were raised truly religious, is different than today. I think religion, we know the numbers are down, congregations are smaller, churches
Not in Texas.
Well, around here.
Big D, we get it. You want to keep shitting on the memory of Ash's grandmother, but just stop backpedaling.
Yeah.
We get it.
And remember, Jean's dad is dead too.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to Al Pacino, because Al Pacino is at the heart of this film. And I fucking love Al Pacino's performance in this movie. And here's the deal. I think objectively, Al Pacino is not a handsome man.
No.
He's short, and I didn't realize how short he was until you put him next to someone like Keanu Reeves. He's kind of harsh looking. He doesn't look like a soft, beautiful man. His accent I have always found really grating, but he's sexy. He's not handsome, he's sexy, because he oozes this like masculinity in the roles that he has, and it's worked for him since The Godfather. Like it works for him over and over and over again. And here's the thing. I don't know if there's a devil, but if there is, I think he would be a lot like this. I think he would be unassuming. I think he would be charismatic. I think he would be fun as fuck to be around.
Oh, I agree.
And I think he would be subtly sexy. There's that scene where he's talking to Keanu Reeves outside in Chinatown, and he says to him, like, he describes how he's fucked this girl and how she turns around and it's like, oh, it was you. And she's confused. Like, I think that Al Pacino's kind of charm there is exactly what fucking the devil would be like. So Al Pacino has this very famous interaction with Marianne, Charlize Theron's character, about her hair. I was nervous about this rewatch because I remember it as being kind of schmarmy. And at first I'm like appalled. And at first I'm like, ugh, like he's so sexist. Although I agree with him about the perm. But still, like, who the fuck are you to say anything? But at the end, I get why Marianne turns. And like, I'm like, should I cut my hair again? Like, is this something I should be thinking about? He's so good, y'all.
No, this confirms my worst fears, Ash, is that it does work, because I was thinking that any self-respecting woman, who you clearly are, would tell this creepy old dude to get fucked, because this whole conversation objectifies women into this other role. Like, they're not even humans. They're just guardians of mystique. A woman's shoulders are the front line to her mystique. No, a woman's shoulders are there whether you can see them or not. They keep her head attached and her arms moving around. Al.
No, I know, but that's why this movie starts to get scary for me, because he is so good and he is such a good manipulator that even a strong, independent woman, I may not go cut my hair and dye it to my natural color, but I would at least be like,
No.
And think about it.
No, Ash, did you guys catch? I thought it was a blooper at first, that it was an error they'd left in. You have Milton and you have Kevin. They're out on that ledge outside of his office with the water going off the edge, the endless or infinity pool. The camera pans down to Milton's shoes. Did you see the lifts that Al Pacino was wearing?
Bro, they're hooves.
Those things are
He's the devil.
like 15-inch heels because he's so short. And Ash, I'm so disappointed that you find him attractive. This is another movie where Al Pacino's got to brag about his prowess. Yeah, I pounded her so bad she couldn't walk barely to the bathroom.
Hooah!
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
So she got a great ass.
Yeah, that's Al Pacino. This movie became...
I'm telling y'all, you just don't get it.
The caricature that he became at this point in his career. Godfather's in the rearview window, and it is nothing but... Hooah!
This is no different than him in The Godfather. This is no different than him in Scarface. This is no different than him in, like, every role, like fucking Sin of the Woman. Like, this is Al Pacino.
Yeah, he gets all the good lines in this movie. He delivers them perfectly. When Kevin's going around his apartment and he's like looking for the bedroom or the bed, and he's like, where does he fuck? And he's from off screen, everywhere, like, it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Or when he's talking about, banging Charlize Theron, spoiler alert, and he's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most depraved acts of sexual theater, 1 being an average Friday night run through at the Lomax household, I'd say, and then he just holds on for a second. He's like, 7. It's perfect. Like, he's not saying, fuck the shit out of her. He's saying it in a very Pacino way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way the devil would talk.
Agreed. He may actually be the devil. Who knows?
Probably the devil.
Oh, that gross, hairy chest.
Hey, when billionaire Alex Cullen is accused of murdering his wife, his stepson, and a maid, Milton assigns the case to Kevin. This demands more of Kevin's time, further separating him from Marianne, and he begins to fantasize about his coworker, Christabella. Marianne begins seeing visions of the partner's wives becoming demonic and has a nightmare about a baby playing with her removed ovaries. Marianne reveals to Kevin that a doctor has declared her infertile, and she begs Kevin to return them to Gainesville, but he refuses. Milton suggests Kevin step down from the trial to tend to his wife, but Kevin says that he fears he'll resent her for costing him the case.
So I know this is a horror film, but I think one of the reasons that this movie works is it isn't just like jump scares or like, ooh, they're evil demon-y scares. The pressure that's put on Marianne and the way that she begins to crumble as a result of that pressure, Charlize Theron does such a good job of showing that breakdown, and her just kind of mental decline is really, really well done. And I think done in like a really authentic way, this slippery slope that she goes down. And a lot of that starts with this pressure for her to join this social circle of these women that are the wives of all of the partners at this firm. And I had never really experienced that before because, as I've said before, like I grew up super middle class. I went to school with a lot of rich people, but they weren't this type of rich people. They were good at heart. They weren't gross. Then I met my best friend here in Houston, who I love. I think she's amazing. She is very, very wealthy, but she's one of those normal wealthy people. But she's got friends who are just like these women in this movie. They are obsessed with their homes and their decorators and the silks on their furniture and their husbands that cheat on them, and they spend all their money vindictively. And so every year I am forced to interact with them once a year at her birthday party. And so this past year, she rented out the schwankiest spa in all of Houston. And so we all went for the entirety of the day, and it like has like this private pool, and it has all these like cabana people who bring you all these foods and charcuterie. And I sat there and I listened to them, and I refused to get in the pool with them. And after like 20 minutes, I get so anxious around them because even I, who give two shits about any of this, I feel so judged by them and so like unable to be in the same room with them that like I leave. Like I stay because I'm her friend, and then I go. And it's like one of my least favorite days of the year. And my husband always begs me not to go because it like fucks me up for like 2 days afterwards. This is what like Marianne is like going through. She's like drowning in this world of these social pressures from these women. And it was making me want to tear my skin off.
I'm not questioning that reality that you just described, but they're treating New York City in this movie like it's confined to a single building. Marianne's got money and she's in New York City. It's not like Kevin says, stay home and decorate. She could take her ass to Central Park. She can go to Chinatown, Dumbo, go upstate, go explore Long Island. There is so much to do in New York City. You haven't even been there a month. Don't choose color palettes and go shopping. Go fucking eat your way through the city.
I call bullshit on that though, because you're somebody who's traveled and has lived in big cities before. This is somebody from a super fucking small town. She has no idea what to do. And people like that sometimes feel really crippled in big cities like this. Like, I think she wouldn't know where to go. I think she's highly dependent on Kevin. She's clearly highly codependent on him. And they don't have a really, really healthy relationship because of that. And I think she would do exactly what she does, which is she would sit there and she would go nowhere, which is exactly what my mother does every time she goes and visits my brother. She's so afraid of New York City. She sits there unless somebody digs her someplace.
I disagree. And I think it's unfair for you to just paint Marianne in that light. I think she's a capable, strong woman who's running her own business. She's repoing cars. She's not from the big city, but she's got money. There's a doorman and there's a concierge in this building. She could walk down and say, hey, what should I be doing? Can you call me a car? Can you get me somebody to take me on a tour? There's a lot of things you can do. New York is built for tourists. All she has to do is hook into that. Just get out of the house.
If only she'd had the big bus tour. She could do a hop on, hop off in New York. They could just tell her what everything is. She could go look around, go look at some nice churches.
Got the park. You want nature? You want to feel like you're back home? Walk across the street. There's a giant lake. There's acres of things to do. But my problem is this. The movie's 2.5 hours long, and it gets to this point, and she all of a sudden kind of snaps. We understand, it's tough being one of the wives of one of the partners in the firm. I thought back to Goodfellas. Goodfellas does a good job of painting what it's like to be a wife married into the family or married into a business where you're trapped. I felt like that was much more effective. Here, she seems to be going along with it. And then all of a sudden she's seeing, zombie babies like stealing her ovaries. It was kind of a sharp turn.
I thought they did a really good job of showing her like slowly like be isolated and be left alone, and eventually that turn into paranoia, which eventually turns into is this real or is this not type of stuff. Like the scene that has always gotten me, as you just mentioned, which is the ovary scene. Like this scene is so disturbing. I always struggle with an idea of evil, especially the way it's portrayed in movies, because it's usually like really heavy handed. Like think Jacob's Ladder and like a big like tail fucking her from behind. It's evil. It's obvious. It's evil. And a lot of the time in movies like this one, it's all crosses and holy water and Latin. That's what they combine to make the, to act against the evil. And that kind of stuff has never scared me, because I think you have to believe in the power of those things in order for you to be scared by those things. So that's why I love an exorcism movie and usually laugh through them, because I'm not afraid of the things in those movies. Devil's Advocate could have fallen flat in the scary category, but I like how they go about showing how I think if evil was real, how it would really work. Because here you've got Kevin, he's with Milton, he's having a good time. And they show you this juxtaposition of like the evil that's fun and the evil that has consequences. And Marianne clearly is paying the consequences here, because she's had the thing that she believes in the most, which is that she wants to have children. She's had that taken from her. It's not God that's taken from her. It's not faith that's taken from her. It's like her greatest desire, which is to give life. And the fucked up part is he doesn't just like render her infertile. He shows her what their baby would have looked like if she would have had one. and he shows her what she could have had before he took it from her. And the kid is playing with the thing that prevents her from having it. Like, it's so gross. It's so evil. And it's like deliciously like intertwined. I think this scene works beautifully.
You don't think she was having fertility issues prior to this?
No.
They've been together a long time, never been pregnant, never had a mistake.
He says, let's make a baby. They chose to finally try. No, I think it's implied that they just hadn't decided to have it yet.
Oh, come on.
Speaking of let's make a baby. Okay, we've already given Al Pacino a hard time about his sex scene in Heat, so we're going to leave him alone here. But can we take a second to truly reprimand one of the most shockingly bad sex scenes in 90s cinema? On paper, it's great. You got young Keanu Reeves, young Charlize Theron. The screen should be on fire. I'm like, oh yeah, here we fucking go. And instead, you got Charlize Theron like writhing around orgasmically, but she still has her pants on. He's got gross ass nipple hair, and I can say that because I'm Persian. And then they keep splicing Charlize Theron with Connie Nielsen of Wonder Woman fame, who plays Christabella, whom they somehow found a way to get the right angles where she looks like an old lady with weird boobs. So at this point, I'm already turning away from the screen. I'm like, I can't take it. No more. I'm running for cover. And then they shoot me in the back with a fucking toe sucking. No, thank you.
I don't know. I liked it because it looked
I did too.
It looked like married sex, right?
Oh,
like
no.
She's gross. She's like all crying. They've just had a fight. She has no makeup on. She's looking all nasty. They're having middle of the day on the floor, not that sexy, gonna last like 3-minute day sex. And I think it reads true here. And for Connie, it's because she's so thin. She's just too skinny. It makes her boobs look like these weird bobblehead fake things on her body.
Oh, see, but Gene, you're in digital marketing. You know about A/B testing.
Yeah.
I like this scene because I'm trying to think, who would I rather sleep with? I'm like, let's get some Charlize. We get the other one back and forth. And I'm trying to decide. I thought it was kind of hot. I thought it was sexy. I thought that Marianne was going to like it, but she did not. But this whole movie, there's way too much Keanu kissing. The first 10 minutes, there's like deep tongue kissing. There's more tongue kissing in this with Keanu than A Walk in the Clouds. And his ass crack, you're right. His ass crack, it looked a bit messy. It looked like hairy. It looked like it should have been cleaned up. That just took me out of
married
the scene.
sex.
I get it. It's because he's Al Pacino's son.
Oh,
so they're giving you hints early on that it's the devil's son with his hairy ass crack and his weird nipples.
Yes, he's like a demon. I got it.
And to clarify, I'm sorry, it's not like my current sex life involves everybody getting dressed to the nines and putting on like a ton of makeup and like waxing. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is more the fact that they filmed it in an incredibly gross manner. And at no point, married or not, should anybody be sucking a toe. Fucking foul.
You have such a foot issue. You need to go see somebody about it.
And I do. I go to jujitsu.
So he's come back home. She's melting down. So this isn't just like makeup sex. This is like mentally ill makeup sex. Marianne, she's on the edge. And I'm finding myself wondering as the movie is going on, is she mentally ill or is she possessed? She's seeing the demons. We're seeing it through her point of view, and she's seeing the faces transform. You know, in the end, spoiler alert, she kills herself. So she's truly had a mental breakdown. But I don't know if it's a pre-existing condition. I'm starting to feel like she's left alone and these things are coming out. Either that or the fact that she's drinking bottles of wine. Her being drunk and alone in that giant building in a foreign world that she's not used to. I'm wondering, because she even said at the end, she said, Milton fucked me, and I half think I wanted him to. I don't know.
I think this movie title's going to your head, Big D. You're playing devil's advocate right now. She's not crazy.
Yup.
She's not. She's actually able to see the supernatural events as they're happening. She gave in to Milton. Yes, it was because she was lonely and he's the devil, so he's really good at manipulating people. But consent isn't unlimited. It's not like if somebody starts fucking you and then they start beating you and stabbing you, it's okay. It can be revoked at any time.
Well, and like he's clearly allowing her to see this stuff. Like, this is him. He has to get rid of her. If Keanu's gonna go off and fuck his sister here, then he's got to get half sister here. He's got to get rid of his wife. So Milton is doing all of this intentionally. From the first time he's with her, he's doing this and he's trying to destroy her.
But she's in a home. The mother's there. Go back to Florida. She had an option, didn't she?
Did she?
Eddie Barzun, the firm's managing partner, is convinced that Kevin is competing for his job when he discovers Kevin's name on the firm's charter. Surprised, Kevin denies any knowledge of this, and Eddie threatens to inform the United States Attorney's Office of the firm's activities. Kevin tells Milton about Eddie's threats, but Milton seems to dismiss them. During the conversation, Eddie is beaten to death in Central Park by vagrants with demonic appearances. A U.S. Justice Department agent warns Kevin that his boss is corrupt and tells Kevin the child molester he defended was found with a dead girl in his trunk. Moments later, the agent is struck by a car and killed. This was an editing choice that really didn't work in this movie. Pacino is there giving a lengthy soliloquy about Eddie Barzun as Eddie is being chased down to his death in Central Park. And this speech is way longer than the original Devil's Advocate script. I checked it out. It was only like about 8 sentences on the original script. It goes on for like 5 minutes in this movie. So I'm guessing Pacino just decided to fucking ad-lib. But you can't really pay attention to either thing. You can't pay attention to what he's saying because you're trying to watch Eddie being chased by like specters or some shit. And then you can't really tell what's happening with Eddie because you're trying to listen to Al Pacino. It's an editing disaster.
Yeah, it's a complete mess. And there's a lot of things about the movie that I don't know were cohesive and left me wondering. Like, during the rewatch, I'm aware that Milton's the devil. It's obvious. I know the reveal is coming, but I can't remember. Was this like an M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong, like third act reveal where it's like, oh, I can't believe it. He was the devil the whole time. Oh, I don't know. We get it. The religious overtones. There's the poster art, which has like flames behind it. Were they trying to trick us at the end and be like, hey, this is a big reveal? Or were we supposed to know it was the devil?
I think it was meant to be like a half reveal. I think it was like, is he just like evil or like the ultimate evil? And they give you the reveal halfway through the movie. Like, I don't think that they tried to hide it or cloak it like M. Night Shyamalan does, but I think we all knew from the poster when he's standing behind him with his hands on his shoulders, Daddy's come home to claim his son.
Yeah, also naming him John Milton is a bit of a tell. I think they telegraphed the shit out of this one. Kevin's mom is super religious and Dad is out of the picture. And then John Milton, who is about Kevin's mom's age for some reason, because apparently the devil ages, he asks specifically about it. I think everyone got it at this point.
So the devil's son is named Kevin
Lomax.
Kevin. Is that in the Bible? And then rain of fire came as Kevin walked the earth.
I mean, Ash said it. He's fun. He's a fun guy. What's goofier than naming your son Kevin?
Big fan of Home Alone.
While preparing Cullen's secretary to testify about Cullen's alibi, Kevin realizes she is lying, but he proceeds anyway, winning an acquittal. Afterward, Kevin finds Marianne in a nearby church. She claims Milton raped and brutalized her that day, but Kevin says it is impossible as he was with Milton in court. Marianne drops her blanket, revealing her naked body covered with cuts. Assuming she injured herself, Kevin commits her to a mental institution. After seeing Kevin's case manager, Pam, as a demon, Marianne hits her with a hand mirror, barricades the room, and commits suicide. Alice reveals that Milton is Kevin's father.
So as the movie's gone along, I'm progressively getting more pissed off, just knowing how the legal system works. If you have money, you can manipulate the system to your advantage. Money is the true equalizer. You can just get away with anything. And then towards the end, I started to think, and how would I act if I was a really good attorney? If you're a good attorney like Kevin, you must walk around like you're above the law. You know how to manipulate the system so you can work it in your favor and get out of anything, any problem. And you can also wield that power to destroy anybody else. Anybody cuts you off, anybody wrongs you, you could bury them in litigation and billable hours to an attorney. It is a powerful situation to be in, and they must feel like God.
I mean, one of the most frustrating things I've encountered as an adult is when people give you that advice to not fight a thing because it's easier not to. Like when someone's pulling a legal maneuver, you're getting sued for something, and they're just like, it's going to cost you more in the long run to fight this thing than to just give in. And lawyers know that, and they take advantage of that. And I know the audience loves when we get political. So I think this is a great time to talk about Trump's presidency and its aftermath and how they've demonstrated how some people are really above the law. I believed until this point, perhaps naively in my life, that nobody was above the law in America. Like even presidents could fall, even people in the highest levels of government, superstars, celebrities, whatever. But when Trump was president, they wouldn't charge him with crimes because they were saying he couldn't do his job as president while fighting a charge, right? It's Department of Justice policy, right? And when he isn't president, the logic is charging him now could ruin his ability to run for president. And none of his attorneys are particularly good. That's the scary part. Is you don't have to be a good attorney. As long as you're utterly shameless and you're willing to file the most absurd motions in the world, like you said, Big D, you can just gum things up until people throw their hands up in frustration and just quit. Well, Kevin leaves the hospital and shoots Milton, but the bullets pass through him. Milton reveals himself as Satan and says he merely set the stage for everything that happened. Christabella emerges from the shadows, and Milton tells Kevin that he wants Kevin and his daughter Christabella to conceive the Antichrist. Kevin shoots himself in the head, and Milton's satanic rage turns the room into a furnace and turns him into a white angel who resembles Kevin. Suddenly, Kevin finds himself back at the recess of the Gettys trial. He announces that he cannot represent his client despite the threat of disbarment, and Kevin's reporter friend Larry offers him a high-profile interview, then transforms into Milton, who says, "Vanity, definitely my favorite sin."
I think that Milton presents a pretty amazing offer here. Like, take the world, have what you want, no consequences, no fear. Like, it's pretty tempting. And I would love to believe that I would have the moral fiber to just like say no and do what Kevin does. But I don't know. If I'm being honest, I don't know many people in my life that would turn Milton down, including maybe even like myself.
No, I'm 100% sure. There's no question. My wife is gone. What do I have to lose? But again, I would join Darth Vader. If I'm hanging off and he says, "Join me, we will rule the galaxy," I'm going, "Okay, Dad, pull me up. Let's go." I would do it. This is a great life. Ultimate power. You enjoy it. You're willing. Your sister's there. I think if Milton...
Your sister's there.
I think if he had just shut up, he talks Kevin out of it. Kevin's about to go in for the finish. I would join.
Big D, you just revealed that you've developed zero backbone from your childhood until now. I would like to point out that when you watched Christine as a kid, you were like, "I would just try to be friends with Arnie and hope that he and Christine were nice to me and wouldn't hurt me."
It's survival.
Now you're talking about leaguing up with the devil and Darth Vader. Man, you got to fight for what's right. But here's what I don't get about prophesied events. So we know Satan is supposed to father the Antichrist, or I guess grandfather the Antichrist, and the Antichrist is supposed to lose to the armies of God. So like, why not enjoy it? It's not, there's still going to be a fight, and in the end, the good guys win. So just do your part. Fuck your stepsister. Have a good time.
For sure. But I'm still confused how Kevin's not the Antichrist if it's falling off of Christian ideology. I mean, that's the one part I was just confused by the whole movie. It's like, but wait, isn't he the son of the devil? So like, wouldn't he be
right
the Antichrist? But I guess not.
And then Kevin met Jesus on the battlefield.
Here's what I don't get. Satan, all he needs to do in this movie is get his horny daughter and her horny stepbrother to bang. Wouldn't it be easier to just take Christabella and Kevin and send them on a business trip to Italy? You don't need to isolate Marianne. You don't need to make her go crazy. You don't need to engross Kevin in a triple homicide case and get him addicted to the taste of winning. You just tell them they got to spend a week in Italy. You accidentally book one room. Oops. Bang. Antichrist.
Yeah, 100%. It would have probably happened organically out on
the plane.
Yeah, on that porch when they were having drinks. It would have happened organically. But Ash, I got to ask you, because there is a knife on the altar that is like shown. Is there something in scripture about maybe there's a sacrifice, or I almost felt like they were going to kill Kevin, and that's why they did it there. He would impregnate her, they'd kill Kevin, and then something would be triggered.
None of this is in the Bible.
Oh, I'm disappointed.
I was raised Pentecostal, so everything was revelations. So no, but I will say one thing to you though, Gene. I think the implication here is that Kevin had to do it willingly. So the hotel thing wouldn't have worked. Like he had to know that he was Satan's son. He had to know what the consequence of the union was in order for it to happen.
So complicated.
You want to talk about married sex? Role play, baby. Hey, I'm your half sister, and we're going to make the Antichrist. Christ. Come fuck me with this knife on the table. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Milton completely blew the vibe. He's going in, sucking on titties, they're kissing, and Milton's there like looking really close, like, hoo-ah, do it. Milton, skate off. I've been in plenty of rooms where people are having sex. Standing over them and looking at them is the sure way to kill the vibe.
He had to chant in Latin.
It's true.
Can't do it from across the room.
Just whisper it.
It'd be in Latin range.
They just couldn't help themselves in this movie. Guys, they're in the writing room. They're like, we want to make this ending fucking epic. We got Keanu fucking his stepsister. Al's over here chanting in Latin and kind of whispering it and waving his hands in the air in his silk robe. You know what'll make it perfect? A marble orgy.
Yeah.
They just had to do it. And then they're like, hold my beer. Let's also have Al turn into a long-haired Keanu to look like the original Lucifer. And then that wasn't enough. Then they had to light the room on fire, and it wasn't good enough for Connie to burn up. Nope, they had to make her a mummy. It was so much like great exposition and really good conversation that was like instantly incinerated by all of this excessive special effect and excessive directing that looked like shit in 2022.
And they got fucking sued for it.
Right.
Yeah, I would be sued so I was not associated with the film. Don't sue like it's a stolen product. That's something you took from me. I wanted nothing to do with it. Ash, you don't describe it well enough alone. The technology was so limited that it goes from Al to kind of Keanu. The hair kind of grows.
It's not kind of. He actually is Keanu in a bad wig.
What I'm saying is it looks like a horrible bastard child, like if the two of them had sex and had a child.
It's really Keanu in a bad wig. There's behind the scenes like pictures of this.
Oh, that's even worse. That's going to give me more nightmares. And then he flies up into this tunnel of like the damned doing a circle around him.
Excuse me, he flies down. He's going to hell.
Oh, it's all a blur at this point, but it was so bad. Keep it simple. In the beginning when they had that marble art piece and it was just kind of flowing, that was enough. We didn't need the orgy.
Earlier on, when Charlize Theron is raped, the scene in the church where she describes what happened, her acting, the pulling of the blanket, all of that was great. It would have been terrible if they tried to show us this scene with like CGI and shit. So it was so smart early on. They were just right at the finish line and they fell on their fucking asses.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to address this at the end to just kind of decide what we think happens in the end. So Kevin surprises with free will, shoots himself. It flashes back to that first courtroom scene where he got the molester off. My question is this. Did all of this happen and then he's kind of thrown back to that decision? Or is this almost like a Westworld simulation where he's played through what will happen if he gets him off? Did he actually live to this point?
You gotta stop saying he got the molester off.
Oh, sorry.
We're over here giggling like we're like 6. Like, oh, he got him off.
I didn't even get what you. Okay, sorry about that. When he
gets him acquitted.
When he was able to get the molester acquitted, when he got him acquitted, is this the fact that now it kind of went back? We see that Milton's still involved. He's still going to try to convert him. So did this actually happen? Was this a vision? What was it?
Yeah, it actually happened. And we know that because he shows up a little bit later in the movie, like minutes later as Larry. It's really the devil. All this shit's really happening.
Right. And I think it's implied that like this is going to keep happening until Kevin gives him what he wants. So it'll happen again and again and again and again and again. And he'll constantly bring him back. And I also think it's possible that Kevin shooting himself, that wasn't the first time because he's really extra pissed about it.
So this is one of the loops. I gotcha. So it didn't work out in the end. You know, Bernard has to go through another iteration, shoots him. He rewinds it back to that moment, hopes he makes the right decision. And we go through another loop.
Word of advice to the viewer when you're watching this movie, when Kevin and Marianne are going down the stairs, just stop the movie there. Just hit stop.
Yeah.
Because when it goes back to Larry, then he morphs into Al Pacino. it doesn't deserve a mention in this podcast other than to say it's absolute shat. The movie goes from an average horror movie to like a yuck 80s comedy in the blink of an eye. And I do mean 80s. It's bad. Now is the time of the podcast where we give our Shat score. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is getting new boobs from Dr. Robert that are so good they pass the field test. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is meeting your father after more than 20 years and discovering he wears lifts. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your Shat score for The Devil's Advocate?
I really liked this movie still. I thought it was scary in parts. I thought it was well acted. I thought Keanu was great in it. Pacino, I thought, was utterly perfect. The writing here and there was really good. And it is what it is. It's a trial film that also happens to be about the devil. And I think that works. Now, I think it's a little long. I think it gets a little too lofty in the end. But I think it's awesome. And I would watch it again and will watch it again. So for me, this is better than average. It's 2 wipes.
Ash, I agree. This movie was long. And the scary part is they cut a lot out of it. If you look at the original script, there's tons of storyline that was cut out of the movie, and they still came in over 2 hours. The Barzun story to me was an absolute misstep. I like seeing Jeffrey Jones in any movie, regardless of his personal life. I just think he's very fun to watch on screen. But we didn't get that whole story. And if you would cut that whole story, the movie would have made sense. So they bring in the whole Weaver thing and the jogging scene, the guy getting hit by a car, and none of it's really necessary to the rest of the story. If they cut that, they get this movie in at about an hour 45, hour 50. It's a better movie, but it's still not bad. I'm saying 1 3/4 wipes.
I agree with everything you guys have said. The core of a good film is there. The story's interesting. The actors are competent. It's shot well. It could have been a great film. And I think the only weakness is they tried to do too much. Do a little bit less. Reduce the ending. Cut that final twist reveal in the stairs with the reporter, and the movie would have been great at a certain point. And it has nothing to do with that it's 2 hours and 20 something minutes. It's a slower film. And it just seems to drag. Get the pacing correct, reduce the story a bit, and you would have a great movie. But for me, it is an average movie. It's 2.5. I won't go back and watch it, but I'm glad that I watched it again this time. But I think it would probably be the last time in my life that I do see this film.
With 2.5 wipes from Big D, 1 3/4 wipes from me, and 2 wipes from Ash, that gives us an average wipe score of 2.083 repeating wipes for The Devil's Advocate.
Gene, with a score of 2.083 repeating wipes, and now ties this in the 134 spot with Crimson Tide, The Color of Money, and Event Horizon. It is slightly better than Home Alone and Major Leagues, and slightly worse than If Looks Could Kill in Kids.
I think this tie with Event Horizon makes total sense.
Yes, totally agree. I feel bad now for the score that I gave The Color of Money. I think The Color of Money is a little bit better. But again, absence makes the heart grow fond, and it's been a minute since I've seen The Color of Money.
Yeah, this feels right. And it's right at the prediction of our commissioner who predicted 2 wipes. Andy?
Wow.
You got it right.
1 for each boob. Well, Andy, I'm glad we can align on our scores for The Devil's Advocate. Big D, let's get to the voicemail for the week.
Hello, Shat The Movies crew. I've recently started listening to your podcast on a particular podcast streaming service. And I've really enjoyed the movies that you put together. My name is Adrian Nemard. I live in the UK, and I was born in the mid-70s. So I grew up around being a kid around the 1980s, and obviously 90s being an adult and seeing some of these movies in the cinema. Your choices, how you talk about the movies, is really educational and really, really interesting, and really is a fun way to kind of reminisce about the movie. So I think you're all doing a really, really great job. I'd like to put forward a particular movie that's a guilty pleasure of mine, which is Rising Sun, which was done in 1993. It stars Sean Connery, who'd already won his Best Supporting Oscar actor for Untouchables, and Wesley Snipes, who was up and coming after White Men Can't Jump. And this movie, Rising Sun, you really do see his martial arts skills, which obviously went on to be showcased in Blade. The movie was so good. When I was watching it at the time, because it had martial arts, it had Sean Connery, it had Wesley Snipes, had Harvey Keitel. I think it had an actor that was a villain in Showdown in Little Tokyo, a little gem with the late Brandon Lee and Dolph Lundgren, and I think the lady out of Wayne's World as well. It is a controversial movie in terms of its subject matter that I don't think would be made today in the way that it casts or, I wouldn't say demonizes a particular section of the global population. But I actually went back to read the main book. And I think what's interesting about this movie is that, without giving spoilers away, the ending kind of changed, which I thought would have softened the criticism about the particular global population, but I don't think it did. And also that the character that Wesley Snipes played actually in the movie was actually white originally cast, though they don't actually specify in the book. So really probably a box office draw by having Wesley Snipes in the movie, and I think it does work. And also the movie, the book was written by Michael Crichton of Jurassic Park fame. Was probably another reason why Hollywood thought it was a good thing to do. Anyway, I hope you at some point take a look at this movie because it's one of the very, very forgotten ones in time. But I think it's really enjoyable for what it is, an early 90s thriller.
Adrian, so many thoughts on this one. One, thank you for your eloquent voicemail. Love getting voicemail from the UK. I'm just a simple American who loves listening to them. Two, I will go into our Discord and try to start a crowdfunding of Rising Sun. I remember it being a fantastic movie. And three, I must say, I feel very guilty about this. And if you guys have never seen the movie, you won't understand why until you do see it. But this was a significant part of my spank bank as a kid. And going back and watching it, I feel very bad about that. So thanks, Adrian, for your voicemail.
Man, now I want to see. I thought it was Black Rain at first, what he was describing. Very different Japanese movie, motorcycles and all. But I got to see this now, Gene. Spank material, really. Is it an assault scene? Is it a dead body? What is it?
Both.
Ooh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks, Adrian. I'll keep you updated on that commission. And next up, we have a very different voicemail. This one comes from Flavor Dave.
Good morning, senor. You told us that Windows 98 would be faster and more efficient and better access to the internet. It is faster. Over 5 minutes. Love that episode, guys. I know it's been a while, but I was like, oh, one of my favorite movies. Commissioned it with Marcos. It's like, I'm going to send a voicemail. Plus, oh, Ash, you just melted my heart so much. I was so nervous. I'm like, oh my God, this movie was made in a different time. Like, what is Ash and Gene going to say about this? Fortunately, Gene wasn't there, but I wonder what the social justice warrior would have said. But anyways, Ash, I couldn't agree with you on every single level. So amazing. And Big D, I did also have a similar experience with renting a movie. This movie came out, I think, around the same time, 98, 99. And I seen this trailer of vampires and what looked like werewolves or something. I'm like, oh, cool. My dad's like, what movie you want to rent? I'm like, I want to rent this one. So about an hour into this movie, my dad's like, Dave, what are we watching?
Is it The Howling?
As you know, it was Dusk Till Dawn. It's basically two different movies. But after that hour went by, it was like, oh, okay, this is the right movie. Because if I was starting to be like, wait, what did I rent? So much other stuff. I listened to the podcast like 7-8 hours ago. So
I guess he got cut off there or he got too excited.
It's Flavor Dave just got some more hot sauce in his eye. He had to run to the bathroom. Thanks, Flavor Dave, so much for your voicemail. And I'm glad to hear your voice again, man. It's been too long, so let's hang out soon.
I'll talk to you later. By the way, I love this new voicemail. 3 minutes, and I can actually stop and reset and listen to it over. And I got a timer. Like, ooh, it's so cool and fancy. All right, guys, check you later.
Son of a bitch, you got us.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
Thanks, Flavor Dave. Thanks, Adrian. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, just go to chatpod.com and use the SpeakPipe feature. You can use it on any device. The audio is crystal clear, as you can hear. You can, as Flavor Dave said, I guess, stop, review, edit your voicemail as well. If you'd like to email us, it's host@shatthemovies.com. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week we are delving into an area we've only gone, I think, twice before, the 1970s. Big Enos wants to drink Coors at a truck show, but in 1977, it's illegal to sell Coors east of the Mississippi without a permit. Truck driver Bo Bandit Darville agrees to pick up the beer in Texas and drive it to Georgia within 28 hours. When Bo picks up a hitchhiker, Carrie, he attracts the attention of Sheriff Buford T. Justice. Angry that Carrie will not marry his son, Justice embarks on a high-speed chase after Bandit, commissioned by Richard M. And I'm excited to go back to 1977, get a little Burt Reynolds, and this will be a good one.
I'm not even wearing a shirt for this one. Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard, for commissioning our upcoming movie. Thank you, Andy, for commissioning The Devil's Advocate. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. Email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. You can find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. You can find all that information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. And if you'd like to join us for the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power watch party on Twitch, we'll be doing that at shatpod.com/Twitch on September 1st, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
At last, a warm, sensitive, touching story about the close personal relationship between a man and a woman, between a trucker and his dog,
Fred, I'm so damn tired of picking you up. I got Fred!
between a father
No way.
and his son.
No way that you could come from my loins.
And how they all took to the road one day for a quiet little drive in the country. From Georgia to Texas and back in 28 hours flat with a truckload of bootleg beer.
I'll be driving this one. Hey, Blocker. You'll be driving the truck. This is Bandit 1, and that is Bandit 2.
Now, who would do a thing like that?
You're crazy, you know that?
Yeah.
You know that?
Yes.
Wait, how much money did you say it was?
$1,000.
Universal presents Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, Jerry Reed, and Fred.
We're gonna really have to cook. I mean, put it on the back burner and let's cook. Is that a 10-4?
10-4.
And the only thing that stands between them and an $80,000 prize, Jackie Gleason as Sheriff Buford T. Justice.
I gotta barbecue your Bandit. I've got a Smokey report for you. What's your handle, son? My handle's Smokey Bear, and I'm tail grabbing your ass right now.
This is Smokey and the Bandit, the story about a lazy weekend in Alabama, Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas, Georgia.
Daddy, the top came off. No. We ain't gonna make it, son. We come this far, ain't we? Look, when we say we're gonna do a job, we do a job. It's me they're after. They don't even know Cletus Snow exists. Oh, they don't. Well, I'll tell you what we're gonna do.
Smokey and the Bandit, proving once and for all, it's not where you're going that counts. It's who the hell's in back of you.
You've got to duck it. You gotta keep